Mr. Rentz.
Mark Rentz, Association of California Water Agencies. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Long day. The questions I have here are clarification questions, not trying to articulate a position. So when I meet back with my members next week and explain to them what's in the changes, I explain it correctly from your perspective. So let me ask a set of questions, if I could, Mr. Chairman, make sure I have clarification.
I should say the Vice Chair just handed me a note essentially prodding me into recognition that 4 o'clock is rapidly approaching, and if we want to get out of here by 4 o'clock when we are ordered to get out of here, we are going to have to abbreviate this hearing. He said it much more politely than that. If a question is
your hearing, you can abbreviate it any way you want.
Well, no.
So I'll move right ahead with my question, so I don't take any more of your time.
Please.
Number one, as I understood from Chris, on that last point that was asked by the gentleman previously, am I correct in understanding that WRP1 is applicable only to covered actions? Yes or no is all I need.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's pretty quick.
Although you are not saying that the statute itself, as a matter of state policy, is restricted only to cover actions.
Thank you.
Okay, question number two to Martha. I'm trying to understand why you took out future, and I didn't quite catch your explanation. I understand your explanation with regards to urban water management plans and agricultural water management plans. Is it my understanding that the baseline is like a floating or periodic baseline in terms of every time you renew your water management plan, it becomes the new baseline for determining reliance? Why did you take future out and explain that to me so I understand it?
Well, there's two questions there. One question relates to the issue of future.
Right.
Because the Delta Reform Act was adopted in 2009, we are in the future with reference to the adoption of the Act.
So is 2009 your baseline then?
And then I said, when you go to the baseline and you want to tie it back very practically to the type of planning that is already being done, we don't want to see people go back and reinvent a baseline for 2009 when they have an urban water management plan that uses 2010 as a key data point.
Okay, so when they renew their urban water management plan every 5 years, which they're required to do.
We'll be using those urban water management plans then to track, as we go forward in time, the progress that's being made in terms of reducing reliance on the Delta, whether it's through the net water efficiencies and savings or it's through expansion of other water supplies.
So the reduction curve is a dynamic curve. Over time, because you renew your plan,
it's a trend line that incorporates all of those updates as it goes forward, but you're still starting from a 2010 baseline.
Yeah, the baseline was actually partially defined in the legislation, and DWR is working with stakeholders on that very issue. So I think that's an issue that's being worked.
Okay, so it's not, it's unresolved, I could tell.
Yeah, in fact, it may be resolved. I'm not aware, but I am aware that DWR has been working on it because it's important for implementation of the law.
Third and last question, Chairman Eisenberg and members. The preface language of this thing is a proposed language is inconsistent, and then it gives elements. I'm assuming once a project proponent and a proposed project proponent makes his or her determination that the action is consistent, the burden shifts to a party who's appealing that consistency determination to prove with sufficient evidence, substantial evidence, that one or more suppliers that would receive the water have failed to reduce their reliance on the data, that the appellant of the consistency determination would have to prove that they have adequately contributed, failed to adequately contribute to regional.
You're reading the statute to us?
I'm just
that is the statute, isn't it? So you're asking us to ratify that the statute applies to our work?
He's reading the WRP1, and if someone makes an appeal, it is incumbent on them to point out how someone has failed.
And they have to do
that is their responsibility. Yes, you don't just
what
make
I needed.
An
Thank you for the answer to the questions.
Thank you. Let's see. Anyone else? Okay. Any questions? Let's go on to flood control, I'm sorry.
What did we decide, Joe?
I think we decided, and Martha's going to correct me if I'm wrong, that fundamentally the language that we had is okay. And I'm going back to look at my notes that say we may need to add a couple of other explanations in here, and we need to consider cumulative impacts. We need to look at using the language that's in the statute. We need to make sure there's a narrative tie between this and Article 10, Section 2 of the Constitution, and add more explanations. And Martha, if there's more that you've noted down there.
I think I'm going to be looking into the 36 months and the vulnerability assessment as whether there's a separate basis for making it a policy and what that might look like.
Yes, Gloria?
I understand it's not mandated, it's not law, so we'll have a recommendation based on...
Gloria, you got to turn your mic on.
Understand it's not mandated, so recommendation, I would say to leave it there and for
Okay. I've got the boldly go language. Let's see, I was just looking to see if we had any. I was going to do some sidebars: urban water management plan, agricultural water management plan, the conservation requirements that already exist. I was going to see if I could put together some language that would get at this, what we're using as metrics, we're proposing to use as metrics now, but some of those broader considerations that really get into the meat of how changing management also can reduce reliance but make other contributions. We wanted to take a look at some of the language on the screening box. We wanted to take a look at, there was one more, Phil, that you had that you wanted us to...
You were talking about rather than making a recommendation, but including as a screening criteria
Correct.
box or side-by-side some of the issues that will explain what you propose be judged under the general policy.
Correct, and then we were going to go back to the Delta Reform Act and make sure that we were tightly consistent with the language and not using slight variations on themes.
Okay. All right.